All right. Hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started, knowing that people trickle in as they go. We actually had to reframe the way that we were going to talk about this topic today. Several questions came in about how CMOs were budgeting. And so we're really going to focus today on some of the priorities that some of the marketing leaders that are going to be sharing today are focused on this year, and how it is that we're adopting AI into our strategic engagements in marketing. Are we operationalizing it? Are we using it for voice? Is Claude writing all your emails now? Has campaign strategy been changed? We're going to get into it today and really talk about the true value and ROI of what it is that we're capable of achieving by thinking agent first in the marketing department. My name is Paula Carnero Cox. I lead this series every month. We are excited to bring you another program. First time that we actually get to talk about the front office. I am thrilled. Often we are talking about automation and optimization in an organization from the back office, from the perspective of where you can cut costs. It wasn't until recently that some of the technology was proficient enough to be able to handle some of the nuance, some of the humanity, some of the sensitivity required in making discerning decisions and trusting something like AI to really be operationalized in our orgs. So today we're going to get into how that's going in a few organizations that you guys might recognize. Now, getting started, as we kind of thought this through, it was important to look at some of the areas where folks were spending money. In the past, it's been kind of a resource area for different marketing moments, right? So paid media could be a marketing moment. It's had its moment. There was a time where that was the forefront of every single demand gen job that was offered was paid media. Do you know how to add those elements to your growth strategy? Agencies kind of came up just like we saw outsourcing, in the mid 90s with finance and accounting, really trying to figure out where it was that we could outsource certain operational tasks. The problem, though, that we're seeing with CMOs, having to rely on agencies is that black box concept that we always see in outsourcing. There's underperformance that you can't necessarily take a look at. It's really difficult to understand where exactly attribution is landing when there's multiple agencies involved. And then really understanding how it is that you're going to go about registering the ROI. How can you report back? How can your spend be defensible? Marketing is no longer about just activity metrics. It's about revenue generation and the true influence and contribution to the bottom line. When we look at paid media, that is one of the bigger spends. It used to be, it's actually interesting to me because I thought it would have been higher. For many B2B companies, it is the go-to. Understanding what your target addressable market is segmented was an easy way to grow, especially with the advent of, different types of influencer marketing, different channels, and switching up the different areas where consumption is had. Social media, TikTok, all these different avenues came on the scene. And I think media became a little bit more complex than it was when you were just talking about the World Wide Web and where you landed on Google. So that began to be a niche area that was outsourced, but more and more as we're seeing the advent of AI taking over some of these areas and the real algorithms that it can achieve in placing media ads, it's beginning to be something a little bit more commoditized than we thought. And it used to be something we thought had a lot of skill and nuance. Labor, of course, is one of the biggest line items in every organization. And while marketing budgets continue to shrink, leaders are getting more savvy about what type of labor they want to hire. So outsourcing for the sake of low cost, additional campaigns, volume uptick and throughput is no longer okay. Mass blasts of emails that aren't personalized, aren't landing. And it's really important now for CMOs to begin to eliminate headcount from the marketing team, but strategically, not just somebody who's entering in campaign data or copying and pasting an additional email for next month's cycle. It's centralizing the critical capabilities and thought leadership required in a marketing department to truly begin to optimize the way the organization is run. And lastly, technology. No surprise, it's one of the smaller spends, although if you ask any chief marketing officer, we have to beg for our funding for these. We try to figure out where it is that we're going to maximize the output, and often we come into our roles with some predefined technology that we either have to use, leverage, or reposition. That was another area that agencies were strong for. As CMOs begin to look at utilizing tech internally, building agents in-house, things and tools like Claude that have been, spread across the different enterprises, it's really beginning to simplify the MarTech stack. It's really beginning to say, why do we need 7 systems of record when we can aggregate this in one place and really have a full view and a holistic look at how the performance of the department is going? The agencies having control, autonomy, and ultimately owing the deliverables of outcomes there make a disconnect between strategy, execution, and we all know we have to move faster than ever in this technological agent first time. So some of the problems with agencies, and this isn't a rip on agencies. We use agencies, we need them, they're bespoke. This is really talking about how to economize the way that you use agencies and really thinking through the areas where there could be attribution. What we're seeing is that more and more the job roles that are defined by leaders in marketing have to have merit. There has to be an explanation on every dollar spent, and sometimes even metrics against what that should be in revenue. And sometimes we're even seeing, because we can get so granular, margin. So as the role of a leader for marketing begins to shift more strategically rather than activity-based branding, output, some of the traditional places that you used to think as chief marketing officer resided or a head of marketing was responsible for, we're now seeing that they're responsible for that bottom line, for making sure that the spend is matching the outcomes and that they are really being a true partner, if you will, to the CEO and the board. So some of these areas that popped up kind of in polling were slow ramp to value. When you onboard an agency, it takes time to teach your story, your message, your shortfalls. Some of the places where you don't want to play are just as important as explaining what your target addressable market is. If you get your, BD organization completely inundated with leads that aren't going to convert to something material, that's a challenge. How long does that take to reinvent with an agency, to revisit the copy, to revisit the strategy, to revisit the cadence, if it's an SDR run, for example, to look back on paid media? Maybe we made a few bets and we spent a lot, but we're looking back instead of looking forward. So some of those attribution areas and those kind of black hole moments are becoming more difficult to justify in the true ROI of a marketing organization. Of course, fragmented systems come into play. I know for us, personally, we have a couple systems of record. We run demand gen and everything out of one CRM, and then sales, forecasting, budgeting, and billing the client is out of another. And so the prospect lifecycle jumps from cold to meeting in 2 different systems. We've been looking at ways to optimize that, without having to change the system of record and keeping our price point down. With the advent of agents, that's possible. No longer do you have to rip and replace full systems. You can actually integrate and optimize the records and the data that you already have, leverage that historical information and use it in-house. Consumption of all of this is so taxing. It used to require hiring more people. Now with agents, we're able to understand, digest, and action some information a lot quicker. And then, of course, anytime there's turnover, I remember I have one of the most amazing, agent, representatives on one of these SDR teams, and they left. And I realized very quickly it was them, not the agency, that was awesome, right? And so you have that challenge too of the people-centric side of it. And some of these risks can be mitigated by thinking of agents or thinking of optimizing using AI or automation in-house. So here's the reality check. All right, let's look at some numbers here. 81% of MarTech leaders are piloting or deployed AI agent initiatives. So we'll ask the ladies joining me here in just a moment how true that is of their world. That's a staggering number of marketers finally saying, okay, maybe I'll take this on. And again, it's because many of us have been watching this evolve, waiting for the day for there to be governance, for there to be an opportunity for us to truly take on messaging, voice, branding, the customer centricity, the customer story, advocacy, all of those very human related marketing attributes that are actually what sell ultimately, not the email, the culture, the nuance, everything about your organization. Those are the type of things that we're able to bring in-house now, being able to free up bandwidth. If you look at the second stat there, They believe agents will deliver significant business performance benefits, content production, data enrollment, and campaign optimization. Now, that first one, content production, I would have sworn to you, no way, no how. We were just talking about it before this started, beginning to leverage AI for some of the PowerPoint creation, some of the thought leadership that we're putting in place. Now, the thoughts come from the human, but the leadership on paper being, being structured in a way that's understandable and digestible, that now can be AI. So it's an iterative nature between how humans and agents or AI is working together. But that was also staggering. I would have never thought that marketing leaders would be that high in pulling what that reality check is. And lastly here, B2B marketers specifically plan to increase spend on AI assistance in the next budget cycle. And the reason is because they're seeing task-based use cases that are able to set things up. So maybe you're not having AI write all your campaigns, but you're having it set up the schedule for it so that all you have to do is type in the notes, and type in the information that has to go there, add a link maybe from your website and go. So fast tracking some of the actions and processes that were responsibilities of the marketers is now increasing as well, which is really exciting to see, and we're experiencing it ourselves. So here's some of the places where you might not think you can find, marketing agent use cases. So it's big thoughts, right? It's things like, I want to make sure our clients know about the new tax law before year end. It's not set up a campaign with all these different tax leaders and the different areas and specifying it, right? Once all the information about your CRM and all the modeling that has been done, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about some of the setup required. Once there's access to all the data, this is what we're talking about. We're at a place where we can converse and interact and say, okay, now that I've seen all of my clients for the year, every treasurer, everyone that needs to be aware of this new tax law, I'd like to send them an email. And however you want to configure it could be 15 emails that pop up. It could be a note with all the information and some links to send to your salesperson. To say, hey, it's time to let them know about the tax law, or maybe you put it into BD cycles or an automatic sequence to make sure that happens. But we can now start having big thoughts, and they can be very quickly whittled down into action-oriented tasks that agents can execute. So it's really exciting to think about it from that perspective. It's not just I have to bust out this campaign. It has to have 15 parts, 2 touches, and 3 of them have to be on social. It's what do I need to prepare? What's the data I have? And hey, maybe even something that I think has a true target addressable market, it comes back and says, all right, the organizations you have, the demographic is small, that there's probably only 5 treasurers. Do you really want to talk to them at scale, or maybe everybody should individually email them, right? And we can start getting that human, because suddenly we have the bandwidth from AI to free up time and free up thought and free up availability. So Agent 24/7 is one of the managed service offerings that we've come up with. It's actually what we're using in-house. So one of the things that I very quickly realized as I began to adopt, Agentic AI into the marketing department at Wonderbots was that we had a whole bunch of tools that we had to wheel together. It's like Wheel of Fortune, right? And there's all these different tools that we had to pull together, that we had to have in place, that we had to, use, leverage, pull data from, and it wasn't always appended in each system, right? So ZoomInfo didn't always know the stuff that was being sent out by HubSpot. And then, like I said, we have Zoho as our other CRM. So aggregating the logic was the first step. And this really made it, this framework really made it easy for me to identify all the different processes that had to be executed, the systems that were going to have to be worked through, and how that would interact with the people at Wonderbots. So we'll pass this along. We'll spend a little bit of time on this, but I wanted to give just a quick view of some of what we had done in-house and some of the thought processing involved in routing agents in-house and saving some of the spend that we were having, or potential spend that we were going to have this year as we seek to grow in agencies. So it's a really exciting time. I know it's been difficult and slow to catch on as far as the ones that are in our world, right? The marketing agents and the things that have a little bit more to do with the personalization. But as we begin to see the value of AI and the way that organizations are really adopting it, it's less about explaining what it is and more about how it's going to work for you. So with that, I invite Jeanette and Mary Lee, please, to join me. They're going to share a little bit of wisdom of what it is that we've been doing, what we've been seeing from various viewpoints. And I want to encourage everybody to ask questions. I know several of you submitted your questions in advance of this talk, but I want to make sure that you are free to ask if anything comes up along the way. And as always, we will send the deck along at the end of the presentation. So hello, ladies. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Mary Lee. I wanted to thank you so much. We've only just met, but I'm really excited about your charge, your experience. I think it's really going to help everybody kind of understand this world that we're in. So why don't you introduce us, tell us a little bit about what marketing looks like today based on your experience getting there.
Great, thank you. So I lead customer marketing at UiPath. I've been here for a whopping 3 months, but I've spent 2 decades in tech marketing specifically. I started out as a writer, and I have sat in almost every seat that there is in marketing, and I've seen technology evolve a lot. And so for me, it's a much bigger wave, and it's changing more than what we've ever seen. But I don't think I have the level of freak out maybe that some people do, just because I've been here somewhat before. So in terms of like what we're seeing today, I think for me personally, there is a lot of change and growth and a lot of opportunities. And I still go back to as marketers, we need to focus on the audience and the business outcomes we're trying to drive, and leverage the new technology in a way that makes us smarter and faster and better, but really using critical judgment in how we get there. But yeah, there's a lot of fragmentation, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of, I think, opportunities for us as marketing leaders to help our teams lead through change in a way that is productive for the company, and develop people in their careers. It's just a really unique moment that I think we should all take advantage of. Did I answer your question? I don't know. I got run away there.
Absolutely. No, and that's what I love about these talks too, because it's never really just a question. These are ideas and thoughts, because this is all new, right? And so anybody who gets up here and says, I'm an expert at marketing agents is a liar. So all we can do is begin to share what we're seeing. And that's spot on, Mary Lee. I think that's perfect. And Jeanette, I wanted to ask from your perspective, because we have this unique, experience where we were explaining what automation was, as like teaching it, like this is what RPA is in marketing, and then the evolution 12 years later, what it is. We don't have to explain it anymore, but we do have to show and begin to have people understand the outcomes and the potential benefits. So we're finally at the part of the story that we were waiting to get to. So share a little bit about your experience, both as leading marketing, leading advocacy, in these roles, and kind of where you're at today and what you've seen, because we went from teaching it to kind of ingesting it to refining it.
Yeah, for sure. Although I have to, so I'll just say, so I'm Jeanette Helsler. I'm the CMO of Roost. So Roost is a startup in the AI and automation space for managed service providers, MSPs. And so interestingly, that market is actually just adopting automation and AI. Whereas I know in the enterprise, like we're full on, agentic, right? MSPs tend to be a little bit laggard in technology, which is ironic because they're IT providers. So that's where I'm still in this new role. I can, like Mary, I have a lot of experience in the tech world, from large companies to startup to large to IPO, and now startup again. But education, like I'm still in the education mode of this market. But I would say you're right, Paula, what has changed dramatically, even in the last year, even in the last 6 or 3 months. Mary Lee, you've got 3 months, you said. I'm 5 months into my role as CMO at Roost. Major change in, I would say, like on the employee side as well as the market side, but I'll talk about the employee side because I think that's so critical. It starts with our employees. I think the curiosity is high. The fear is high, but I think it's balanced with like at least for the employees that are into this, right? And I see a few on this call today, embracing the change quickly, embracing the tools. I do think this part is actually interesting, and I think is relatable also to our customers. Our customers, a lot of boards are asking, what are you doing with AI? Which is like, the question is, how are you using the tools, AI, agents, even automation, right, in an intentional way to drive your business outcomes, and also, to Mary's point, deliver value for your customers. So I don't think it's about the tools and being speedy and being creative it's actually about how do you use the tools to drive better business outcomes and better customer value. And the tools are getting better, right? So that's the other thing. That's the big change. And so there's confidence around using the tools because they are hallucinating less, right? Although you still gotta, check them. So that is what I see. So I think for me, it's all about getting your employees in a really good place so that they can authentically deliver great value, right? And intentionally leverage the tools to deliver better business outcomes.
No, I think that's spot on. And I'm going to boomerang right back to you, Jeanette, because as you're building out your team, I think it's important too for some of the folks that asked, they were clearly like on track to want to be, a leader in marketing, or how can I contribute some good ideas to my marketing team? So what are the type of talent levers that you're looking for in today's marketer? You mentioned curiosity, so I'm assuming that's one of them, but tell us a little bit more about the modern marketer and what kids out of college or young professionals who are trying to figure it out, or folks that are trying to reimagine their career later in life. What are the skills and attributes of today's marketer that you think are important to highlight?
Yeah, I still say curiosity is on the top of the list. And that is both about embracing the tools, but also being curious about learning your market, learning your customers. That's fundamental. Frankly, I think that's a fundamental skill, AI or no AI. I also think humility. So humility is about listening and being willing to change. Humility is about listening to your customers and also to different perspectives. That's a very important value to me. And then importantly, integrity. We're looking for people that have high integrity, are going to inspect what is expected, that aren't going to take the lazy way out, which is like, let me just let Claude, create my PowerPoint, as we just talked about. Lastly, I'll just say, and then this is something you read about all the time, is like adaptability. I think that goes hand in hand with curiosity. We want to hire people and retain talent that are willing to adapt, willing to, take a left when everyone else is taking a right. That's super, super critical, right? So being on your toes, being able to take a quick left, and also to share the adaptability. It's your own adaptability, but it's also influencing others to take that left turn, right? To take some new bold actions.
Right. It's let me reach out my hand and we'll jump off the cliff together,
Yeah.
And we'll figure out what happens along the way. Right.
Totally.
No, but I think courage is part of it too.
Courage.
Really reimagining the way it is, and talking to my team there, we've changed a few things because we have to see the productivity metrics so that I could really validate some of these agents that we were building. Yeah. Are they really working? That means that folks have to also participate in some of this change, and it's uncomfortable and it's not always right the first time. And I think you're right, being humble and saying, guys, I'm not saying I have it perfect. Here's the phase one. Let's see if we can, iterate and make it better together. But I think really being inclusive of employees is so important. And I'm so glad that I have a team that's willing to raise their hand and give input. And Mary Lee, you stepped into a charge, which is really interesting too. UiPath announced its, second act, if you will, a big ploy for, a big push for this agentic world that we're talking about today. And I know that you came in and your role has been slightly shifting, but in the charge that you have of reviewing all the different vendors that have participated, all of the different elements of workforce, contingency workers, content writers, the slew of staff, right, that's made up of both agency and in-house. Tell us a little bit about how you're reconciling that and how you're looking at agent first, as you guys are thinking about some of the agentification in-house, and what is that going to look like? Because I'm sure that's a hefty charge to take on.
Yeah, I'm in the learning mode of for sure. And I think it is interesting because you're looking at it like I'm not looking at it as we need to get rid of all of our agencies and we need to cut everything, right? It's like you need to know, like, what is it good for? What are you trying to do here? Where do you need fresh thinking, creative, outside in perspective? So what I look at is, are we using agencies and contractors and things like that to augment our workforce in a way that is, I had too much work, or I had, a body of work or a program I need to just offload because we just can't possibly, right? Like those are the areas I'm looking at. Okay, we can possibly, how do we streamline things? How do we, what are we trying to do, and how do we do it better? And then how do we leverage the different people and systems and agencies and so forth to do what they're good at and what we need them for, rather than as just an offload of work. So I think companies are looking at, or hopefully are looking at things that way, rather than just trying to hit a number of reduction. But I think it is like we're looking at agencies right now, right, for really big thinking, creative work. But we're streamlining and rationalizing all of it. And I think, like, I'm going to go back to the question you asked previously a little bit. And then I think that there's this evolution of, or this maturity curve, if you will, of starting with AI. And you're thinking about it as, how can I do my work easier and faster just for me? And then I think then you go to a place where it's, how do I orchestrate business better across, how do I connect the dots? How do I go across systems and people and agencies and drive the business forward? And I think that's where we want to be. And that's how we look at talent and workload.
Yep, spot on. And I couldn't agree more. This isn't about agencies are bad. It's just reimagining work means all the functional workers and contribution of labor that goes towards this has to be reimagined. And Jeanette, you made a great point. MSPs are the last to adopt. That's why we took on an MSP business, because we're like, well, this seems silly not to, right? Or technology. And you're like, wait a minute. So you're still offering this at a per hourly cost. How can we get better? How do we shrink the margin? How can we make your hour expand, right? And I think those are the areas that we're beginning to see, to see drive. Now, similarly, agencies are kind of like the managed service of these different functions, right? And the folks that are executing outcomes. As Chief Marketing Officer, when you evaluate kind of all of your costs and your contribution, I'm more interested in revenue as a startup. You guys are very revenue focused, I imagine. How is it that you reconcile your cost attribution to what it is that you're looking to do? So what as a leader in this space, how would you suggest that the modern marketer kind of reimagine how we're forecasting, how we're looking at contribution and attribution? It's the age-old tale, is where did that dollar really come from? So what are you seeing? What are you seeing in your space?
Oh, wow. That's a lot. I mean, honestly, I don't think it's changing that much. At least in my world, okay. Actually, let me back up and just say this. So I've always been a marketer and worked for companies that cared immensely about marketing as a way to drive business outcomes that are tied to shareholder, customer, and ultimately employee value as well. So that's just sort of sorry, that's no longer going off there. That is just a value. I think I'm attracted to those kind of companies too, because I'd like to think marketing is a strategic driver. So in that way, I don't see a huge shift. The shift is the mix, which you shared about, a little bit about, okay, maybe, more in terms of tooling, right? Obviously, digital is a very big shift, but it always ties back to what are you doing that ties directly to the North Star KPIs of your company? And then how does marketing goals, right, sort of cascade down from those KPIs? That's how I operate the business here. That's how I've always operated the businesses and that I've led. And I think that is what gets marketing a seat at the table as well. From I think you were talking about like being activity driven. It's less about the activities and more about the outcomes. And that's also back to my point about AI. You're not using AI for the sake of AI or agents. You're using those things to deliver on the outcomes, right? That tie to your business, your company, company imperatives.
And that's coming from a place of you mentoring me 3 years ago in preparing how I was supposed to treat you. You're like, Paula, always make sure that everything you do touches back to $1. And that's so true. But here's where it gets weird now, right? Is that as we're attributing, what our cost versus our impact is, if you will, because marketing is impact, either on revenue or on those KPIs, those North Star KPIs. Is AI accelerating it? Is it making the expectation higher? Is the gap widening? Are there any changes that you think are going to be expectations on marketers, given some of those Gartner stats that budgets are shrinking? Do we have to think about it differently, or do you think it's think about it the same and keep driving value?
No, I mean, okay, so that's a real, always, that gets back to my curiosity point.
Yes.
You always need to be thinking about things differently. Right. So how do you get, so just like we pitch, right? We're all of us here, right, we're pitching to an audience to use our technology to drive business outcomes, right? Number one thing is productivity. Let's face it. I mean, all the other things really matter too, revenue growth, right? Better customer service, but it's about doing more with less, scaling the dollar, as you say. So I think it's evaluating your tool set and then also the impact on what that tool set is doing. I'm going to back up and actually say, like, it's interesting. We're talking about AI and has it, sort of modify the thinking, right? The reality is, like, you have to have good fundamentals in place, right? And then you apply those fundamentals, like any kind of good, when you're setting up a good test, right? Knowing what your goals are, being able to measure those goals, right? Making sure you incorporate the learnings and you fail fast. So that is very much, a part of this way we're thinking about AI and spend.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's exactly the message is I think everyone's freaking out thinking that they're supposed to be explaining it different, or I'm supposed to show you the tangible value of that. And we're still in the nascent stage. And I think that's the right message is continue to experiment, continue to optimize where there are wins, suggest them. Are they scalable? And first and foremost, you better have a framework in place on how your operations work, or else it doesn't matter. You go faster with AI, you're going to be faster in the wrong direction, So I totally agree. I think that's exactly right. And so Mary Lee, I wanted to ask this one to you. One of the things that we've been seeing a lot too is the adoption of AI and demand gen in different areas, in the business. And you gave a few tangible examples of how you guys are leveraging, AI in your workforce. Can you tell a little bit about how you guys maybe collaborate on that, or do people share their agents, or what is the collaboration for economies of scale in this citizen developer, if you will, kind of spot that we find ourselves in right now with AI? So tell us a little bit about the learnings and some of the stuff that people are collaborating on.
Sure. Yeah, I think we're very much in a similar place as our customers, where you're hearing about companies that are in sort of this race from like pilot to production, where you've implemented pilots, you're trying to connect the dots across your company and across marketing, for example. And I think it's super fun to come in every day and hear about what people have put together. And sometimes it's like, you have multiple people trying to do similar things. So you have to compare notes because there's different ways you can do it. We are actually doing an offsite with our extended marketing leadership team where we're trying to walk through those maturity steps and bring everybody up to sort of the same plane, because it's really, you have your, like, I have people on my team that's like, I call on Cliff when I need something because he is way far ahead of everybody else. So you collaborate on how you're doing it and what you're thinking about, but then I think you have to get in a room or virtually and think about the strategy. And so we have a few major work streams that we're trying to automate and optimize for me. Like, one of the key use cases that we're looking at is end-to-end event production, right? We also have one on campaign execution that another team is leading. There's several more, but we have these larger ones that we're going to collaborate on, that are at various. Advocacy is one, the pipeline for customer stories, right? There's a lot of handoffs and a lot of sources for that kind of stuff. And so we're at various states of maturity and driving those. Some are up and running and producing and iterating, and others are, a gleam in our eye that we need to get off, the square one. So yeah, it's super fun. And it's one of those things that, like, what's your day, you're trying to do it in addition to your day job, and so we're taking time out to, like, really focus and get everybody excited about it and on a similar playing level so that we could be more effective. And I think taking that time to coalesce as a team and lead people through the change, rather than thinking of it as a scary thing, like, participate in it, get value out of it, move everyone forward together.
Yes, and I think what you're describing there too is making it part of the culture, weaving it into the fabric, because now we can all empathize with the poor accountants who are trying to figure out RPA 12 years ago. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
That is,
they're like, I'm just trying to close the books, and you guys are over here talking robots. Like, what is going on, right?
I will say that the elephant in the room is that there is a lot of pressure on marketing, and everyone's a marketer and always has been. And now it's even worse, where you have probably your CFO or whomever putting things in Claude and telling you, well, this is what I came up with. You can no longer say that you can't find marketing attribution or whatever you have said in the past. So, like, the pressure is real. I don't want to discount that. And everybody's got their own personal assistant and buddy that's, like, telling them how things should be. So there's a lot of consternation and noise out there that you have to, like, hold your ground and be convicted and open-minded, and also know what you're there for and what value you bring as a marketer. And being a consultant to the business is really important.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think you make a great point, because, there's going to be competing initiatives, all driven by Claude, driven by the user, right? So much like any meeting to brainstorm an initiative at an organization, there's a whole bunch of ideas that are going to come together, except there might be, to Jeanette's observation, more opportunities to be humbled about the fact that maybe your Claude idea isn't the best one in the room, right? And that we should all collaborate on what that looks like. But I'd certainly feel that, the pressure of marketing being able to do more. Oh, it's fine. Slap up another case study, and another web page. Oh, okay, no problem. We're going to sell a new functional role. And there's no understanding of how all of that comes together. And while I agree that AI can enable us to get that done faster as far as production goes, you still have to not have writer's block on the day that the content needs to be written, because at the end of the day, there still needs to be human, involvement in that. And we do have brain farts. We do short circuit, unlike our agent counterparts, right? And so that iterative nature, I think you're right. We have to continue to be a voice for our department. And then again, to, what I've always been coached is make sure that the dollar matches back to revenue, in this space. Jeanette, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I love what you just said about consternation. It's like about really just having we know our stuff as marketers, and if you don't, you're going to learn it, right? That goes back to being adaptable, right? Let's face it, LLMs, they're taking all of our ideas and then they're serving them up, right? So we are the ones with the judgment, right? We're the ones that can uniquely set the vision, intuitively understand our customers. So I think we have to remember that, remind ourselves of that. And also back to the like leaning on the tools, push the tools. Like if everyone's going, again, back to like, I don't want all the ideas that everyone else, kind of that you regurgitated for me. I want to come up with the ideas that are unique, that are differentiated, also genuine, right? That is critical. So, you might get a lot of everyone's a marketer, but we are we are the disciplined people in the room, right? I need to hold our ground, both to the people giving us that feedback, but also to the tools that are giving us regurgitated ideas.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's the only way that this actually works, right? Is it's not that Claude gave you that idea. It was like a amalgamation of Paula's and Mary's and Jeanette's that put things into the ether sphere. And really what we're talking about is protecting your IP. And I think that's fundamental because the marketers that are going out to say, "Oh, I'm so fast, I have campaigns spitting out left and right." Well, guess what? Everybody has all your email content too. All your competitors have, everything. And guess what? It's not special anymore. And
Right.
that prospect's probably going to get the exact same email from somebody else. So absolutely spot on. You have to have a level of discernment that this is a tool. It's an enabler. It is not the functional role. And I think we need to make that crystal clear. So in kind of thinking through a few things, I had a couple questions come in that I'll ask too, but I wanted to ask each of you independently. So Mary, I'll start with you first. As we're looking at this from the perspective of, we've touched a lot about what humans can do versus tools. What do you see in the next year as far as the capabilities? Some of the things that maybe marketing will be able to completely offset, or maybe offset in a way that we didn't imagine, in the next year with some of the stuff that you guys are dabbling in. You mentioned events. I know you have several examples. So which one do you think is going to kind of rise to a really good agentic use case in your world?
Oh, that's a good question. I think anything that requires a lot of legwork that would have taken a lot of time, a lot of handoffs. Like I'll go back to event management, right? When you think about you're going to be running a kickoff, right? And let's just say in Europe or somewhere, and you have all those RFPs, it could take months, right, to manage all of that. So I think we had a case where we were able to load in like our attendance base, our, tell me all of the properties, and it spit it out in 2 minutes of like a whole financial model, not just options, an entire financial model, and deeper thinking than you could get, right? And that's incredible. So think of all of, it's not just the coordination, it's the time to market you can get with like collapsing a lot of that back and forth, and a lot of the churn that you get just internally with all the back and forth like that goes away and frees you up. There's whole, I don't want to scare anybody, but there's whole systems and things that you have along your value chain that you might not even need anymore, right? It's just gonna shorten things completely. So so the question was, in a year, what does that look like? I think it frees marketers up to do what they're good at, like a lot less, email, Slack, back and forth, and more actionable, being intentional, being strategic. The use cases there's the fun part and the challenge is that once you do one thing, you realize there's 10 more things you can do. So yes. I guess the real challenge is how can you be strategic and think ahead and prioritize versus doing death by 1,000 cuts and just, doing the little stuff versus taking a step back and thinking about the big stuff. And I think that's where collaboration with your fellow humans really comes into play, of like everybody doing their own thing in silos is not going to be effective long term. It might help you out in the short term, but you need to work at a bigger level for your company to, for your strategy and what you're trying to do, and ultimately for your customers and what they need. And I think that there's just a lot of glut in the market. There's just, humans can only consume so much on the receiving end. So think about that as well in terms of the volume you're putting out and what you're putting out.
Oh, totally. And that's what I was going to say too. You kind of have to modulate it with the fact that you don't have an agent receiving your new agent forward marketing program. So it's a human that still needs to digest it. And I strongly believe that sometimes, prioritization and strategy is about what you're not going to do, so that you can keep people focused, because it would be very easy to run down every rabbit hole that has popped up since we started this initiative in-house. And us personally, we are going to stick to the sequencing logic, so we can augment our channel marketing program, 10x, because we can be even more minute, have more minutia in the attributes of the different, campaigns, the people, the size of the company, the things, and go at scale a little bit harder, a little bit more acutely. So we're not doing volume, we're doing number of campaigns, whittling it down to what we couldn't do as humans, right? So that's one of the areas that we're doing. What about you? Where are you seeing with your optimization initiatives, and what are you seeing in the next year?
So I'm just going to just punctuate that point with a fact I just heard. I think it's like 60% of Americans or US are reading like one book a year. It's down from like over 70% in the last 10 years. Why? Because there's a lot of distractions, right? We can't, it's just too much information right, coming at us. So that gets at the point of being intentional and focused. And so what I see and what I'm actioning to is actually leveraging the tools to pick up signals, leverage your external and your internal signals to really understand your customers better and your market, even prospects, right, better. Here's why, because this is going to help from a marketing perspective. One is obviously to create content that is delivering on what's happening in the market, right? What are people talking about? What's of interest? Also customer health, if there's issues, right? It's also being able to address the healthy customers and also the customers maybe on the fence, right? The unhealthy customers. And then importantly, we talked a little bit about advocacy, which is near and dear to my heart, is also sensing, looking at those signals to identify who could be a potential advocate, maybe who is actually advocating out there, and then formalizing that advocacy. So I think data, that synthesis, it's not just the gathering of the data, it's actually the synthesis and the insights from that data. I think AI is doing a great job on that. Still some hallucinations, but also this is where marketers play a role in taking that data and looking at through the human lens and through the brand values, right? What you know about your customer, right, instinctively.
Yeah, no, and I think it's just being able to prepare. I can't tell you how many times when I sit down and do a plan for the year, and then I'm pulling everything from last year, what worked, what didn't, what are the lost, what are the revisits, like all that work that you do, that's totally streamlinable, and year over year, once you begin to get, okay, wow, pattern, we tend to close a lot of deals in Q4. Maybe the budget should be higher then, right? So I think in leveraging it from that perspective, there's certain things that just human capacity can't have with all the data points that come from all these different tools that we've been given, right? So I think that's definitely part of it. And then the other thing too is I think that helps with the agency thing too, is that if we're responsible for our own data and we are clear on what our metrics are and targets, well, then it's much easier to hold our agency counterparts to the fire, to the contractual agreement, or get smarter about the contractual agreement, because you now know what you should be able to expect and see. So I think there's optimization moments in every area of where we connect with the laborers that make for a marketing department, where we can really find optimization there. I wanted to ask a couple of the questions that came in, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to flash your guys' information here. So that if anybody wants to connect, you certainly can after this call here. So I'll leave that there as we get to the last of the questions. All right, so we had one in the chat here. I'll start with that one. In real world deployments, where do agents struggle? Context, data quality, or execution? You want to take that one, Mary?
I knew you were going to come to me.
I said, you're the UI pather in this world right now.
So what were the three things?
Context, data quality, or execution. I think those are all pain points of ours in our world.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. I think that there's still a lot of opportunity around the data piece of it. I do think it's getting better with context, and I think the execution is great. Like I think it's about the inputs, and again connecting the dots. I think from people are focused on agentifying, but they really need to think about orchestrating across points. And I think that's where the real challenges for companies, and I think that's where UiPath comes in. Sorry, I'm not supposed to do a shameless plug, but that's where I think that we are cracking the code on, pardon the pun, where we're figuring out how to, and there's more to come on that, how to work with agents, have humans in the loop, drive the connected tissue, and move things along, because that's where business stalls, is across systems and people and so forth. So I think it's all getting better, and there's challenges on each end, but I tend to think of it as a connective whole than one versus the other.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I would say data quality would be my answer, hands down. Data quality is the problem. It's been an age-old problem since the beginning of time. Outsourcing, black hole, bring it back home, shared service, black hole, data transparency, maybe not even quality, transparency and access might be the issue. So great question. And then Jeanette, I'm going to ask this last one that came into you. Did you always know you were going to be a chief marketing officer? And what did you do along the way to get there?
I will tell you, early on in my career, I wanted to be CEO.
So not there yet. You're on the
no, adaptability. I have done everything in marketing, nearly every function. So the answer is yes. I always knew I wanted to be an executive, was it CMO or CEO, something something leading. I've always been a leader. That's sort of part of my personality. I like leading through people, elevating teams and people, and driving results through what we do, tying back to business outcomes or company imperatives. So that's the yes. How did I get there? Leaning into hard things. Doing the hard things. Really, raising your hand, trying new things. Failing. I have not been successful, in all of these things I've tried. And actually, I'm so glad I haven't. Like I was thinking about this the other night. I had this bad experience in college. I was an RA, and I got some bad feedback on it. And I was thinking it came to me the other day, and I thought, wow, I'm really thankful for that. That was really rough feedback that I got way back when. I'm a better leader for that. So I'd say bring it on, like lean into the hard things, be humble, meaning listen for those signals from people, even when it's hard to hear, and just always be pushing your comfort zone. Like that's it. So yeah.
And I think that's is a good summary for where we're at right now, because every marketer, even if you're experienced or thought you knew your stuff, we're all being stretched out of our comfort zones right now, to optimize and get on point with this future of work. So, well, ladies, thank you so much for the amazing conversation. There's more questions that popped up that we just simply didn't have time for. So I'll send those along to you with some of the askers, post show. And as with all of the content that we provide at Wonderbots, this will all be shared with all the registrants and those who attended. Thank you for joining us. And with that, we will see you guys next month for Agentic in Finance and Accounting, back to our roots, where Hitesh from UiPath Chief Accounting Officer will be joining us to share how he's agentifying his internal house. So that'll be really exciting. Thank you so much, ladies.
Great. Thank you.